The world is full of strange events that defy logic and explanation, from eerie sounds in the sky to entire islands that seem to disappear without a trace. Number 15. Imagine stepping outside on a clear night, gazing at the stars, and wondering, where is everybody? With billions of galaxies, each containing billions of stars, it seems impossible that Earth is the only place where life has developed, and yet there's silence. This contradiction is at the heart of the Fermi paradox, named after physicist Enrico Fermi, who asked a seemingly simple question during a casual lunch in 1950. Where is everyone? At its core, the Fermi paradox points out the unsettling gap between the high probability of alien civilizations existing and the complete lack of evidence for or contact with any of them. Let's break it down. Astronomers estimate there are over 100 billion planets in our galaxy alone. Many of them exist in the so-called Goldilocks zone, where conditions could allow liquid water and potentially life. So, if intelligent life is common, why haven't we seen signs of it? One explanation is the rare Earth hypothesis, which suggests that while simple life might be common, intelligent life like ours is incredibly rare, maybe even unique. Perhaps Earth is an anomaly, but others suggest more unsettling possibilities. What if advanced civilizations tend to destroy themselves? This is known as the Great Filter Theory. The idea is that at some point between the rise of intelligent life and the ability to travel between stars, something happens, something catastrophic that stops progress. Nuclear war, climate collapse, rogue AI. Whatever the filter is, the implication is that either we've already passed it, or it's still ahead. Another theory proposes that extraterrestrial civilizations are out there, but are deliberately avoiding us. This idea, sometimes called the zoo hypothesis, suggests Earth might be under some sort of cosmic quarantine. They see us, but they don't interact. And then there's the possibility that alien life is so different from us, we wouldn't even recognize it if we saw it, or that we're looking in the wrong way, using radio signals, for instance, when other civilizations might communicate using technology far beyond our understanding. There's also the unsettling thought that we might just be too early. The universe is still young in cosmic terms. Maybe intelligent life simply hasn't had enough time to spread across the stars. Despite decades of listening, scanning, and searching, we still haven't found conclusive evidence. No signals, no spacecraft, no cosmic breadcrumbs, just silence, and that silence can feel a little eerie. Maybe we're the first, maybe we're the last, or maybe the truth is far stranger than we can imagine. Until we find answers, the Fermi paradox remains one of the most chilling mysteries in science, not because it suggests we're alone, but because of the silence in a universe that should be buzzing with life. Number 14. The waters between Bimini and the Turks and Caicos Islands are beautiful, clear, turquoise, and calm on most days. But beneath their inviting surface lies a string of disappearances that remain unsolved to this day. Some call it coincidence, others aren't so sure. This part of the Caribbean, located near the edge of the Bermuda Triangle, has long been associated with strange events. But in recent years, there's been a pattern of boats vanishing with little or no trace, often in good weather and without distress calls. One such incident occurred in 2021 when a small passenger boat left Bimini bound for Lake Worth, Florida. It never arrived. The US Coast Guard searched over 17,000 square miles, but no debris was found. No one was ever recovered. What made the incident even more puzzling was that the boat had no obvious mechanical issues before departure, and the weather was calm. With no communication or SOS, the mystery only deepened. And it wasn't an isolated case. Reports from the past 2 decades detail similar disappearances. Small fishing vessels, Private yachts and even commercial boats have gone missing while traveling between Bimini and the Turks and Caicos, often without leaving behind any sign of trouble. Some believe these vanishings are connected to natural forces. Strong underwater currents, sudden weather shifts, or rogue waves could explain how a boat might disappear without warning. But even in those cases, search and rescue teams usually find some sign: wreckage, fuel slicks, or belongings. In many of these incidents there was nothing. Others point to possible human causes. Piracy has not been ruled out, and there are suggestions of smuggling routes in the region where encounters with traffickers could turn deadly. But that doesn't explain why experienced boaters, often in familiar waters, vanished without a trace and without any attempt to call for help. And then there are the more speculative theories. Some tie the disappearances to the infamous Bermuda Triangle, suggesting that something anomalous may exist in the area: magnetic interference, dimensional rifts, or other phenomena we don't fully understand. These theories remain unproven but continue to gain attention online and in fringe research circles. Local legends too speak of unusual occurrences: phantom lights over the water, compass malfunctions, and eerie silences at sea. What makes these incidents especially unnerving is that there's never a clear answer. Just long investigations, open cases, and grieving families left with questions. Are these just rare maritime tragedies in a busy region, or is there something else at play, something no radar or GPS can detect? Whatever the cause, the waters between Bimini and the Turks and Caicos have earned a quiet reputation, not for their beauty, but for what seems to vanish within them. And as long as these cases go unsolved, the mystery will continue to ripple just beneath the surface. Number 13. What if someone or something was flying near jetliners over LAX? Between 2020 and 2022, pilots began reporting sightings of what looked like a person in a jetpack hovering thousands of feet above Los Angeles International Airport. Some described the figure as being only a few hundred yards from their planes. The first known report came on August 30th, 2020, when two airline pilots spotted what they believed was someone in a jetpack at around 3,000 feet, just outside their approach path to the runway. More sightings followed. In October of that same year, another pilot warned air traffic control that they'd passed someone in a jetpack. A few months later, in July 2021, a similar figure was spotted again, this time at 5,000 feet. The sightings prompted investigations from both the FAA and the FBI. Authorities were skeptical. After all, most commercial jetpacks have very limited flight time, often under 10 minutes, and they're extremely loud. The idea of someone flying one high above a major airport multiple times without being detected on radar or seen taking off or landing seemed highly unlikely. Still, the pilots remained convinced. These weren't prank calls. They came from seasoned professionals used to identifying aircraft, drones, and birds. What they described didn't match anything they'd seen before. Then, a break in the case. In November 2021, LAPD helicopter footage captured what looked like a floating figure in the sky, except it wasn't a jetpack. It was a human-shaped balloon, specifically one resembling Jack Skellington from The Nightmare Before Christmas. It had drifted thousands of feet into the air. Authorities concluded that at least some of the earlier sightings could have been similar novelty balloons carried aloft by wind, but not everyone agreed that the balloon theory explained everything. Some sightings involved movement that didn't align with wind drift patterns. Others described behavior too controlled for a balloon. To this day, the identity of the so-called jetpack man remains unknown. No individual ever came forward. No device was found, and no video clearly confirming a real jetpack flight has ever surfaced. Whether it was a series of misidentified balloons, an elaborate prank, or an unknown test flight, the jetpack man of LAX stands as one of aviation's most surreal modern mysteries. There were no crashes, no confirmed photos, just unanswered questions floating above one of the busiest airports in the world. It's one thing to expect the unexpected on the ground, but in the air, at 3,000 feet, with dozens of lives depending on every flight, seeing a lone figure drifting in the sky is more than strange. It's unsettling, and in this case, it's a mystery still hanging in the air. Number 12. It started like any other test run at a robotics facility in China. Engineers gathered around, ready to observe a demonstration of one of the world's most advanced humanoid machines, a robot designed to mimic human motion with eerie precision. The machine, known as the Unitary H1, hung suspended from a crane, ready for a controlled trial. And then, something went wrong. What was supposed to be a routine movement test quickly spiraled into something almost surreal. Without warning, the robot began flailing its arms and legs wildly. Its mechanical limbs swung with force, knocking over equipment and yanking at its own support cables. Two engineers standing nearby had to duck out of the way as the machine jerked dangerously in their direction. The scene was unsettling, not because the robot was conscious or aware, but because it moved with a strange, chaotic energy. The motions weren't random, they almost looked panicked. One moment, it kicked. The next, it twisted sharply to one side, pulling the entire support rig forward. At first, those who saw the footage couldn't believe it was real. Many thought it had to be a special effects clip, or maybe even a prank, but it wasn't. What had happened was a genuine malfunction, a technical hiccup that exposed just how unpredictable machines can be under the right or wrong conditions. Experts later explained that the robot's sensors misread its environment. It believed it was falling, so it tried to stabilize itself. But because it was tethered to a crane, its efforts to correct only made things worse. The robot entered a feedback loop, adjusting again and again, each time more violently than before. It wasn't an attack. There was no AI uprising, but the effect was no less chilling. The engineers eventually powered down the machine, but the questions lingered. How close are we to giving these machines too much autonomy? What happens when even a simple miscalculation leads to physical chaos? That same month, another robot in China was spotted wandering too close to a public event. Though no one was hurt, the image of a humanoid robot walking toward a crowd unsettled many people online. Were these just isolated incidents, or small signs of a future we don't yet understand? The truth is, these machines aren't sentient. They don't think or feel, but they do act, sometimes unpredictably, based on complex systems of code, sensors, and decision trees. And when those systems misfire, the results can be startling. The 2025 incident at the robot factory wasn't catastrophic. No one was seriously injured. But for many who watched it unfold, it felt like something out of a science fiction film. Not because the machine became self-aware, but because it didn't have to. Sometimes fear doesn't come from intelligence, it comes from malfunction. And as robots become more lifelike, the line between error and intent gets harder to see. Number 11. High atop the shifting sands of Beaver Dunes Park, sometimes called the Shaman's Portal, there's a stillness that feels alive. You arrive expecting dunes, birds and wind, but something else lingers, an unseen presence that many describe as whispering through the sand. Locals say this place has guarded memories for more than 1,000 years, stories passed down of screeching lights, lost travelers, and even people disappearing into the dunes themselves. Some legends say these dunes were once a sacred transition point for native shamans, who used the area to cross between realms during rituals. Some visitors, drawn to the history, come prepared for a spiritual experience. Instead, they leave with an eerie certainty that something else was there with them, an old passenger you didn't sign up for. It's not all folklore, though. In the 1500s, early explorers reportedly recorded strange lights, flashes of green and white, where their men suddenly vanished into mid-air. An old journal attributed it to spirits or hobgoblins that protected the land. Modern visitors describe strange moments too: electronics misfiring when brought close to the sand, magnetic needles spinning in circles, and a low hum that seems to rise from deep below after sunset. In the 1950s, the US military reportedly investigated the site. They stationed equipment to test for radiation, but results came back normal. No technical explanation for compasses going crazy or radios cutting out. Later, UFO enthusiasts added their own layer of mystery: blinking drones seen at dusk, orb-like lights floating low and wide, then disappearing in an instant. Some say they followed flashlights and walked away to find the beam shining through, yet nothing there but footprints in the sand. What's interesting is how consistent the reports are. Awakenings at odd hours, footsteps around tents, a feeling of not being alone. One night, a camper told me he awoke to see his friend kneeling and speaking to the air, eyes glazed, unreachable. When the morning came, the man had no memory, only a persistent headache and the sensation his soul had wandered close to the dunes. Scientists call it pareidolia, or mass suggestion, suggestive of a collective experience born from expectation and landscape. Others chalk it up to wind-borne vibrations, what they term geophysical phenomena. But these explanations fail to capture the feeling of being watched, the sense that the dunes themselves have a memory. That memory, if you allow the stories, is ancient and stubborn. The shaman's portal isn't just a scenic overlook or an odd geological feature. It's a threshold between the natural and the strange, the temporal and the timeless. For some, it's enough to tell themselves it's the wind and their imagination. For others, especially those who camp under the wide Oklahoma sky, it becomes something they remember in their dreams. By dawn, the normal world returns, tamed and bright, but the dunes, they say, keep some of the night with them. So if you ever find yourself standing on those dunes, feeling your skin prickle under empty sky, ask yourself, what else is here? Number 10. High in New Hampshire's White Mountains, just below Mount Washington, sits the Lakes of the Clouds hut, a rustic mountain lodge perched at over 5,000 feet. Surrounded by massive boulders and alpine tarns, it's meant to be a refuge. But for decades, visitors and caretakers alike have whispered of something else, a presence that feels waiting, watching, and sometimes even following. In spring, when the hut reopens after harsh winter months, a reunion moment sometimes turns eerie. In one incident, a lone maintenance crew member named George, a veteran but visibly shaken, climbed 3 miles up the Ammonoosuc Ravine Trail to inspect the locked hut. His radio went silent. When colleagues finally reached him the next day, they found him crouching under the sink, terrified and clutching an axe, muttering only, "Get me out of here," with unshakable dread. George later shared what he'd sensed. As he sat in the dark dining hall surveying supplies, he felt someone behind him. Turning, he saw faces press against the boarded windows, one after another, eyes unblinking and dark. The faces seemed to melt toward him, as if sliding through the boards and glass, and then he woke up, shaking in that cabinet. Such stories aren't one-offs. Campers and staff over the years have reported footsteps in the basement, whisper-like sounds in corridors, even locked doors opening on their own. Apprentices recount bathroom trips where they felt icy hands graze their shoulders, despite being alone. The hut is more than a cozy place. It's a crossroads of nature's raw power and human fragility. Built in 1915 as a life-saving shelter after two hikers tragically froze nearby, it has faced weather that can reach 200-mile-per-hour winds. Even a single misstep can be fatal. Those conditions, along with years of human presence, have woven together a tapestry of fear, folklore, and the unexplained. Some say altitude, exhaustion, or suggestion cause these sensations. Others suspect geological quirks, vibrations, wind patterns, or magnetic shifts. But those explanations fall short when someone recalls seeing faces behind stone and glass, or feeling darkness where there's simply no place to hide. Science may seek data, but ghost stories thrive on what science can't pin down. At night, inside the hut's wooden walls, the temperature drops, the hallways grow quiet, and the boundary between shelter and threshold blurs. Each season, new hikers arrive, hoping for camaraderie, hot soup, and stories by lantern light. A few stay up late enough to claim the footsteps in the hall. Some wake to see shadows linger in corners that should be empty. The Lakes of the Clouds hut doesn't demand belief. It asks presence. And in its quiet, thin-air spaces, that presence feels returned. A face may not press or a door may not open, but the slightest shift in footstep, the softest sigh in the night, it's enough to make you wonder, who or what inherited the solitude of that space? Is it memory, or something that simply never left? And if you choose to hike it tonight, know this, the mountains remember, and they sometimes answer. Number 9. Along the rugged coastline of southern Alaska lies an abandoned place, once known as Port Chatham, or Port Lock, as locals sometimes call it. Today the trees have reclaimed the roads, and the fishing docks are long gone. But locals still speak of why it was truly left behind, and why no one ever tried to return. In the early 20th century, Port Chatham was a small but active cannery town. Settlers lived, fished, and logged the land like any other coastal village. But stories began to surface, stories so strange and chilling that within just a few decades, the town was empty. It began subtly. Hunters and loggers who wandered into the nearby forests sometimes didn't return. Others were found days later, lifeless, but without any clear explanation. There were no signs of struggle, no obvious injuries, just fear etched onto faces, as if something had chased them beyond comprehension. Locals began blaming a shadowy figure they called the Nantiinak, an Alutiiq term loosely associated with a mysterious forest creature, sometimes likened to Bigfoot. Descriptions varied, but most agreed. It was large, covered in hair, walked on two legs, and kept its distance, except when it didn't. By the 1940s, the reports had escalated. People claimed to see the creature watching from the tree line. Chickens and dogs went missing. Footprints, too large to be human, were found in the snow, leading to nowhere. Even seasoned hunters began refusing to enter the woods. One tale spoke of a hunter found high in the trees, as if he had been thrown or carried there. Whatever the cause, fear overwhelmed the community. Businesses shuttered, homes were left with belongings still inside, and eventually, Port Chatham fell completely silent. To this day, the site remains uninhabited. Skeptics suggest more grounded theories. Perhaps violent weather, bears, or social tensions drove people away. But the stories persist, passed down through generations of nearby residents who still warn against stepping foot in those woods. In 2009, and again in the early 2020s, modern expeditions tried to revisit the mystery. Some investigators claim to hear knocks in the forest or catch glimpses of movement beyond their camera's reach. No proof, just whispers. As always, is Port Chatham merely a forgotten ghost town, an echo of hard times and old fears? Or is there something deeper hiding in the shadows of the Alaskan wilderness, something not quite animal, and not quite gone. Sometimes it's not what you see, but what refuses to be seen, that haunts a place. And Port Chatham remains a place that no one dares to reclaim. Number 8. On a quiet January night in 1939, the luxury passenger train known as the City of San Francisco raced through the Nevada desert. It was one of the most advanced trains of its time, promising comfort, speed, and elegance as it traveled from Oakland to Chicago. But just outside the tiny town of Harney, something went terribly wrong. At around 9 p.m., the train suddenly derailed in a remote section near Palisade Canyon. 11 of its 14 cars tumbled off the tracks. Passengers were thrown from their seats. Some cars crumpled like paper. In total, 24 people lost their lives, and more than 100 were injured. It was one of the worst train disasters in US history at the time. At first, investigators suspected mechanical failure, but as crews examined the wreckage, they found something odd. There was no damage to the rails from normal wear or heat. Instead, the tracks had been deliberately tampered with. Someone had removed the spikes that held the rails in place, realigned the steel, and then covered their work with crushed gravel to hide it. It wasn't an accident. It was sabotage. But who would do such a thing? Despite a full investigation by the FBI and Southern Pacific Railroad, no one was ever arrested. There were theories, of course, disgruntled workers, rival companies, even vague hints of political motives, but nothing ever stuck. To this day, the identity of the saboteur remains unknown. Locals near the canyon began to speak in hushed tones about the wreck. Some claimed to see ghostly lights along the tracks at night, or to hear the distant sound of a train that no longer runs. Others believed the site had become cursed, haunted by the memory of those who never made it home. The wreck left behind questions far deeper than the... Sometimes it's not the absence of evidence that's unsettling. It's the precision of what someone was able to do, and then disappear without a trace. Number 7. In the fall of 1993, James Kello, a quiet accountant from Vermont, walked out of his office during lunch and never returned. There was no note, no warning. His car was left in the parking lot, keys in the ignition. His bank accounts were untouched. For over a decade, he was simply gone. Local police launched a missing persons investigation. His family searched tirelessly. Posters faded in windows, and eventually, time began to close the case with silence. By the early 2000s, most assumed the worst, an accident, or perhaps something darker. But in 2007, something unexpected happened. In a small village in coastal Portugal, a man named Colin Marsh had made a quiet life for himself. He lived alone, worked in a bookstore, and was known for being polite, if a little distant. When he collapsed one day from a minor heart episode, the hospital scanned his US passport and flagged something odd. It was fake. Portuguese authorities followed the trail and eventually contacted American officials. Fingerprints revealed the truth. Colin Marsh was James Kello, alive, well, and apparently choosing to stay that way. When news reached the United States, his family was stunned. A reunion was arranged. But here's where it gets stranger. James didn't want to come home. He spoke gently, calmly. He said he hadn't been in danger, nor did he fake his death for crime or money. According to him, he simply needed to leave. One day, he realized he was living a life that wasn't his, and instead of trying to fix it, he decided to start over somewhere no one knew his name. James declined interviews. He signed a few legal documents confirming his identity, but didn't go into detail about how he managed to disappear so cleanly. According to records, he had lived under the radar in various parts of Europe for nearly 14 years, always paying in cash, always staying off the grid. To this day, no official explanation has been given. No crimes were found. No one ever came forward to say they helped. It was as if he had vanished, then quietly rebuilt a second life with nothing but willpower and distance, and then he vanished again. After the story broke, James, still using his new name, moved out of his small home in Portugal and has not been seen publicly since. Some say he feared media attention. Others believe he was part of something more secretive. But maybe, just maybe, James Kello was simply a man who did the impossible. He disappeared from one life and successfully created another. It's a quiet mystery, without violence or scandal. Just one man choosing to step off the grid and somehow doing it for years without a trace. Number 6. Frauenfeld is a peaceful town in the rolling hills of northern Switzerland, quiet, clean and seemingly untouched by anything unusual. But in the winter of 1982, a single sound would ripple through its calm streets and leave behind a mystery that remains unsolved to this day. It started with a gunshot. Just before midnight on January 4th, several residents living near the old town square reported hearing a single sharp crack, unmistakably a firearm. The police were called. Officers arrived quickly, expecting to find evidence of an accident or perhaps something more serious. But there was nothing. No one was injured, no broken windows, no traces of a weapon, no reports of fleeing suspects or suspicious activity. Just silence. And one detail everyone agreed on: the sound had come from inside the square. Over the next few weeks, the incident might have faded away, a strange one-off, chalked up to a car backfiring or construction noise. But then, it happened again, and again. Over the next 3 months, residents reported the phantom gunshot at least 7 more times, always at night, always in or near the same cobbled square. But despite additional patrols, sound recording equipment, and even thermal cameras, there was never any source. The local police eventually released a statement suggesting the sound could be echo-related, possibly a hunting rifle from the woods beyond town echoing off the valley walls. But hunters in the area reported no activity during the time frames in question, and the sound by all accounts was far too close. Some began to wonder if it was something else. Older residents mentioned a story from the late 1800s, a duel that allegedly took place in the very same square between 2 rival officers. According to town folklore, one man was shot and died at midnight, just steps from the town's old fountain. Though no official records exist, the legend gained new life in light of the mysterious sounds. The church nearby reported a spike in visitors lighting candles after each incident, not out of fear, they said, but respect. Eventually, the reports dwindled. No one knows why. By the end of spring, the ghost gunshot fell silent. To this day, no one has been able to prove what caused the sound. No device, no echo, no human source. Just a sound, heard by many, that appeared and vanished with no explanation. Sometimes, a mystery doesn't come with shadowy figures or dramatic sightings. Sometimes it's just a sound in the dark, real enough to bring police to your door, but never real enough to explain. Number 5. In the summer of 2010, a series of eerie photographs began circulating in online forums, grainy images taken in the woods of northern Maine. What made them so disturbing wasn't anything overtly violent. In fact, the photos were oddly still, quiet. Each one showed a figure standing alone among the trees, dressed in a dirty, vintage-style clown suit. The first photo appeared on a small outdoor blog. A hiker who never gave their real name said they had been exploring a trail near the old Penobscot logging route when they spotted something bright through the trees. Curious, they raised their camera and zoomed in. There, about 30 feet away, was a person in full clown makeup, staring directly at them. No movement, no sound, just standing there, as if waiting. The hiker snapped a picture, turned around, and left the woods immediately. They didn't return to retrieve better shots. They didn't want to. Over the next few months, more photos surfaced, all from hikers in roughly the same wooded area, sometimes weeks apart. Some saw the clown at a distance, others only noticed it later after checking their camera rolls at home, a pale face peering from behind a tree or standing in a shaded clearing. But the figure was always alone, always silent, and always watching. Local authorities were contacted. They searched the woods but found no sign of a campsite, discarded clothing, or props. They said it might have been a prank or a performance art piece. But when reporters asked whether any local theatre groups were behind it, none came forward. Residents in nearby towns began to take notice. Some stopped hiking in the area altogether. Others dismissed it as a strange internet myth. But for those who saw the photos, and especially those who took them, it didn't feel like a joke. Then, just as suddenly as it began, it stopped. No new photos appeared after October of that year. The clown figure, whoever they were, simply vanished from view. To this day, no one has identified the person. The photos have been analyzed and debated. Some believe they were part of a viral marketing campaign that never launched. Others think it was a local artist creating urban legend material on purpose. And then there are those who think it wasn't a person at all. No interviews, no footprints, no sounds, just a painted face in the forest, captured quietly and by accident. The forest clown photos remain one of the internet's lesser-known but deeply unsettling mysteries, a reminder that sometimes it's not what something does that makes it frightening. It's the fact that it stands so still, just watching, deep in the woods, with no clear reason why. Number 4. In 1993, the Woods family moved into a modest farmhouse just outside of Asheville, North Carolina. Surrounded by forest and a quiet stretch of rural land, the house was old but charming, the kind of place you'd imagine raising kids or growing a garden. But from the very first week, something felt off. It began with the music. Late at night, long after the children were in bed, the parents would hear it. Soft, tinkling music, like a lullaby being played on an old wind-up music box. The melody was delicate, faint, almost beautiful. But the strange thing was, they didn't own a music box. At first, they thought it might be coming from outside, maybe a neighbor or even a child's toy left on. But whenever they tried to track the sound, it would stop, then start again, from somewhere else in the house. Over the following weeks, the music would return at unpredictable times, sometimes after midnight, sometimes just before dawn. Always that same lullaby, always just out of reach. Then, the children started to hear it. Their youngest 4-year-old Maggie asked her mum if the lady with the box was going to come sing again. Her mother, startled, pressed for more, but Maggie just smiled and said, "She comes when we're all sleeping." Soon after, other strange things began happening. Drawers left open, lights flickering at odd times, footsteps in the hallway when no one was there. The family was unnerved, but not yet frightened. The house was old. Things creaked. Things moved. They tried to make sense of it. Until one night when the music box played again, but this time much louder. The father, Daniel Woods, swore it was coming from the basement. He grabbed a flashlight and went down alone. There was nothing, no music box, no speakers, no reason. But when he turned to go back upstairs, the flashlight flickered, and for just a second, he saw something in the far corner, a figure barely visible, wearing what looked like a long dress. When he turned the light back, it was gone, but the music had stopped. The family contacted a local historian who told them the house had once belonged to a piano teacher in the early 1900s. She was known for composing lullabies and for caring for sick children during an influenza outbreak. One of her favorite students, a young girl, had passed away in the home. The Woods family stayed another year, and while the activity never escalated, the music box would still play from time to time. It was no longer frightening, just strange and a little sad. They eventually moved away, but they never forgot the music, that gentle melody that seemed to drift through the halls, as if someone long gone still had a song to share. Number 3. The eerie mystery of sky trumpets, skyquakes. Imagine stepping outside on a quiet afternoon, only to hear what sounds like a deep, metallic horn echoing across the sky. No planes, no storms, just a low, haunting blare, as if the clouds themselves were groaning. People around the world have reported it, mysterious sounds from the sky that no one can quite explain. They go by many names: sky trumpets, sky quakes, apocalyptic hums. The phenomenon has been heard in Canada, Germany, Australia, the Philippines, the US, and beyond. And while the locations vary, the reactions are often the same: confusion, awe, and in some cases fear. The sounds are often described as metallic, sometimes like a trumpet blast, other times like grinding steel or an underwater rumble. People have filmed the events, pointing their cameras at empty skies while the noise echoes around them. Some videos show flocks of birds reacting or dogs barking at what humans can't explain. One of the most well-known incidents happened in 2011 in Kiev, Ukraine. Residents paused in the streets, listening as a strange sound rolled over the city. Long, low, and almost musical. Videos went viral, but it wasn't the last time it happened. In fact, similar reports have appeared regularly for over a decade. What's strange is that there's never a consistent cause. Some scientists suggest these sounds could be the result of shifting tectonic plates, tiny earthquakes in the atmosphere. Others say they might come from changes in the Earth's magnetic field, atmospheric pressure, or even solar activity affecting our skies. There are also more grounded theories, like distant construction, trains, or industrial noises being carried unusually far by temperature inversions. And in some cases, hoaxes or audio overlays can't be ruled out. But not all reports fit so neatly into those boxes. In places with no heavy industry, no seismic activity, and no nearby flight paths, the noises remain a mystery. Indigenous legends from various cultures have long described sky booms or spirit trumpets that signal changes, omens, or messages from above. In the 1800s, American colonists called them Seneca guns, after hearing unexplained booming sounds near lakes in New York. The native people, it said, had already known of them for centuries. The common thread across all these events: the sky trumpets usually arrive without warning and leave just as mysteriously. No damage, no source, just a sound that seems to come from nowhere and everywhere. For some, it's a natural puzzle still waiting to be solved. For others, it taps into something deeper, the feeling that the world is stranger than we think, and that maybe, just maybe, the skies are trying to tell us something. Whatever the cause, the eerie music of the sky reminds us of how little we truly control, and how vast the space above us really is. Number 2. In 1947, a young Canadian couple boarded a train bound for the United States. Their names were Christina and Jack Kettlewell, newlyweds, hopeful and in love. They were headed to the honeymoon they'd dreamed of. But 8 days later, one of them would be dead, and the other would return home with more questions than answers. In hushed tones, as the vanishing island. It's not marked on tourist maps. In fact, many claim it doesn't always exist. The stories began as scattered accounts, fishermen returning to shore, speaking of an island they spotted that wasn't there before, and then, hours later, wasn't there at all. Some described it as a strip of land that seemed to rise out of nowhere, not large, just enough to notice. Palm trees, a patch of sand, nothing too unusual, until it disappeared completely beneath the water, Curiosity grew into concern when, over the years, several small boats and their passengers went missing in that same region. No wreckage, no distress calls, just silence. Locals say the area, just northeast of Antigua's main island, holds strange energy. Compass needles twitch, radios crackle, and some claim time seems to behave differently. A few islanders avoid the area entirely, calling it cursed. Others believe it's a natural phenomenon, an uncharted sandbar that appears only under specific conditions. But even that doesn't explain the missing people. One of the most chilling incidents happened in 1977 when a pair of amateur sailors, experienced, well-equipped and familiar with the waters, set out to explore the supposed ghost island. They never returned. Their boat was found weeks later, drifting and empty. No signs of damage, no signs of them. In another account from the 1990s, a diving team reported seeing what looked like a stone foundation beneath the waves, too symmetrical to be natural. Some speculated it could be ruins from an old colonial fort or a lost native settlement. But when another team returned days later, there was nothing, not even a rock formation. Satellite imaging hasn't offered much help. The spot appears as open water, but eyewitness accounts keep coming, describing a place that seems to drift in and out of existence. Modern explanations range from shifting sandbanks to underwater seismic activity, but none fully explain the vanishing land or the vanishing people. And yet the stories persist, not in loud headlines, but in quiet warnings from boatmen, in tales told at beachside bars, in the unease that lingers whenever a new disappearance is reported nearby. Is it just nature being unpredictable, an elaborate set of coincidences, or is there something deeper in the waters off Antigua, a secret the sea occasionally reveals and just as quickly takes back? Whatever the truth may be, one thing is certain: some places in the world don't want to be found, and in Antigua, one such place may already be hiding, just beneath the waves. Thank you so much for watching this video. Subscribe for more.